this video is more for the customer, but it's interesting nonetheless, so I thought I'd put it here. We're dealing with this Morris, and it had a small hole here in the rail, which we filled up last night, and then it had some cracking on the rail here. So we've given that a resin coat, and we'll glass both of them today. But the interesting thing is, now that I've sealed them up and come back the next day, let's have a look at the nose. So now that I've sealed the board up completely, apparently there's one more hole left in the nose, and so all of the water in this board is being forced out. I didn't even know there was water in this board until I saw this. So according to my scales, it is 20.5 degrees in my glassing shed. And so what's happening is the EPS foam that this board is made out of, because it's warm, it's breathing outwards basically. And that breathing outwards is forcing all of that water out of this newly discovered crack in the nose. Now that's kind of useful because it helps us discover dings. You put your EPS board in the car after a surf, it warms up and you see something like that and you're like, oh, there's a ding there forcing water out. The problem with EPS is when it's cold, it does the opposite. So when you take that board into the water, the EPS foam breathes in and it sucks and draws water into it. The problem there is that EPS foam despises water. If it's allergic to anything, it's water. So that's why if you have a ding in your EPS board, don't surf it. No matter how small it is, don't try and jam wax in there. Don't put duct tape over it. Don't put the board anywhere near the water until that ding is dealt with. This board came in for repairs 3 weeks ago. Finbox came out because it needed replacing, and this board was drying for 3 weeks. I had to drill holes in the side of it in order to let that water force out. Had to open this right up to let that water drain out. And then after all of that, I thought we were ready to go, and so started working on it, and I sanded some damage on the nose, and as soon as I opened the board up, what came out of it? More bloody water. Keep in mind, if you're riding an EPS board and you have a ding in it and you choose to surf the board anyway, you may be waiting weeks and weeks, and in the case of something like that surf ski, you could be waiting almost a year for all of that water to drain out of your board. If you've got a ding in your EPS board, don't surf it. So this video is more for the customer, but it's interesting nonetheless. That's what I say. Welcome guys, and I hope this is all working okay. It's been a week already, so we're gonna go through some comments. Let me know if you just saw the new video, Tuesday's video. So the next mission is to edit together Wednesday's video and have that ready for next week on Wednesday, and then we'll do this again after that premiere. Seems to be working out alright so far. So yeah, let's just get straight into it, I guess. We'll start answering some comments, let some people join, and then see where we end up. If you end up getting any weird noises from the heater in the background or my computer fan, let me know. Actually, maybe I'll put the microphone over here. So yeah, if you do end up with any weird noises, let me know and I'll turn the heater off and freeze. So it's the type of sacrifices I make for my subscribers. So the first comment is going to come from Will Ferris, who said, congratulations on 5,000, because last week we got 5,000 subscribers. Bit of a milestone. I've recently found an interesting way to get fin boxes out. I found a slide hammer works beautifully as long as the fin box is not completely smashed apart. You can sink a screw into the box, attach the slide hammer, and pretty much pull it out. That sounds genius. Thank you for the congratulations, Will. And yeah, I like the idea of a slide hammer. I do sometimes, if I'm trying to take a box out really neatly, I'll cut the glass off from around the box, and then I'll sink screws like you've said, and then I put the board upside down and I grab those screws with a pair of pliers and I smack the pliers with the hammer. But that can be quite tricky because you don't want to smack the surfboard on the way up with the hammer. So the slide hammer, I'm guessing it's kind of a little one, but that sounds like a really cool idea. I might look into finding myself a mini slide hammer. For those that don't know what a slide hammer is, it's generally used by panel beaters, and it's kind of like a metal rod with a little hook on the end of it usually, so you can grab stuff, but you can get different attachments, and then that rod has kind of a sliding bit over it, so your rod grabs something and then you just slide it up to the end and it pulls dents out and things like that. So yeah, that is very cool. So thanks very much. I really like that idea. I'll look into them tomorrow. I generally use pliers. Is that with a Y or an I? Pliers and a hammer to grab the screw. But a slide hammer is a way smarter idea. Sure. Thanks very much. Really like that idea. I'll look into them tomorrow. I generally use pliers and a hammer to grab the screw, but a slide hammer is a way smarter idea. That's what I say. What do we got next? Jim. Jim said, welcome back. As always, great work. The filter should... Oh, this is the filter on my Soviet mask. Oh, so did I mention it in last week's video as well? I must have. So if you haven't watched the video that I just put out 20 minutes ago, it probably doesn't matter because apparently I mentioned it in the one before that, the Monday video as well. But I found out that those old Soviet masks used asbestos in their filters. That was the actual filter. So if the filter broke inside the canister, then you were literally breathing in asbestos dust, which, yeah, counterintuitive. I think I put it in the new video. So I was basically asking if anybody knows how to tell if there's asbestos in your mask filter. So Jim has said the filter should have ID numbers on it, and that you could search and get the information you want. Same with the mask. Best to go from manufacturers if possible for most accurate info. Should be able to search the filters you want that fit it. So I kind of did that. I didn't go to the manufacturers because I'm pretty sure they're Russian, but I did contact some army surplus stores, as I said in the video that was just released, the Tuesday part of this series, and thank the Lord that my filter is a model 79, and 74, or after model 74, they didn't use asbestos anymore. So that was a huge relief for me. I'm not going to lie, I was a little bit nervous about what they might tell me, but they did recommend probably best not to use that filter because they still didn't use the best materials in them even after that. And there was something too I was reading about the masks themselves can contain drill dust. So even in some countries like Ireland, I think they recalled the masks as well as the filters maybe 5-10 years ago, somewhere in that kind of range. But I think I'll risk it with the mask. With the filter, I definitely want to change, and I will definitely get a new... you can buy new filters for them that screw into the bottom. So yeah, I'll look into that at some stage. Oh, I've done that thing again because I pressed 1. One day I'll learn how to use this software and that won't happen anymore. Cheers, man. Did some digging and I'm going to have to write asbestos, aren't I? And the good news is my filter model is post asbestos. Asbestos? Is that right? Asbestos. Yeah, I think that's right. Holy moly. Is post asbestos error. That'll do. Big relief. Imagine if I'd given myself asbestos poisoning for you guys, just for YouTube videos. I'd end up on newspaper headlines. Influencer dies of asbestos poisoning for likes and clicks. Big relief. We'll look into some more modern filters for it. So they did tell me at these army surplus stores that I'd probably need an adapter, because if you go modern filter straight to that old mask, there can be it doesn't fit quite as well. So they make these adapters that's kind of a perfect fit either end. So I will look into that. We'll look into some more modern filters for it. Okay. I'm going to turn the heater off. Because it's cooking. On to the next one. Fulip. Fulip says, love the format. Thank you. Glad to hear. Telemia says, great format. I was going to write the exact same thing, but I thought that might be lazy. Cheers. Stoked to hear it. There we go. Oh, I did that thing again. It's when I press numbers. So that's number 2. That one was number 3, but the microphone is not hooked up to number 3. And then when I go to press exclamation mark, if I miss it and just hit the 1, then it takes me to screen number 1. So that's what's going on there, if you're ever wondering. Andy says, and now we're all on the hook. Seriously, great format as usual. Thanks for posting. Stoked. Thanks, Andy. There are some questions and things along the way, guys. I promise, just once we get past the initial comments from that Monday one. Karim says, hey mate, what kind of paint do you use to paint on top of the hot coat, and do you sand back after sealing? Thanks a lot, bro. Keep up the great job. Hey mate, what kind of paint do you use to paint on top? Oh, I'm guessing by sealing he's meaning clear coating. So yes, as some of you might know, I use Molotov paints, and same with the clear coat, either a matte or a gloss clear from Molotov, and then once that's cured I usually leave it to the next day, and then I will sand that, normally starting at 600 or 800 and going up as far as the job requires before polishing it, unless it's matte, and then I don't sand it because then you have to polish it and it becomes gloss. There's a tip for you if you're sort of low on money and you can only afford to buy like one or the other. Buy the matte clears, because the matte clears actually sand and polish up quite well, but you have them as matte if you require, which isn't that common, but occasionally you will want it.
G'day. I wonder if I can tag people from here. Doesn't look like it. No. These Molotov paints, including their clears for both. That might. After clearing, I usually wet sand, starting at 600 or 800 and going as far as necessary. Oh god, how do you spell that? Necessary. Like that. Going as far as necessary. Kenneth, is it hard to sand down the foam bubble in the middle, or can you cut it down to save sandpaper? Enjoy the content. So this is from the series that we're doing on shorts, which is almost finished. I think there's 2 more episodes to go of that one, number 11, number 12. So he's talking about, because the stringer was fractured on this creased board. Actually, we can probably just have a look at it. Oh, that was the wrong tab. Well, that would have been in number 4, I think. And what I'll do before we do that... Oh, maybe I won't. Any minute. So you guys probably have audio on that, but basically that big blob in the middle he's talking about. Interesting. There we go.
Sand it all to shape, get that glass down, and then fill what air void.
So that's basically what he's talking about there, is that giant blob in the middle. So he says, is it hard to sand down that foam bubble in the middle, or can you cut it down and save sandpaper? Enjoy the content. You can cut it down and save some sandpaper, although that only requires 1 disc of sandpaper. So even if I cut it, I'm still going to use that 1 disc of sandpaper. It's going to be 120 in this case. So you're not really saving sandpaper, but you can save some sanding, and that's never a bad thing. So quite often I do cut the tops off of the foam, but this one in particular, there's fiberglass in the middle of it because we sandwiched that fractured stringer. So it would have been pretty hard to cut through that one. So thanks for the question, Kenneth. Hey, nothing wrong with cutting the top off first. This one had it actually had almost, I've got a weird letter there. This one had almost 50 ounces of fiberglass in the middle of it, though, so it would have been harder to cut than usual. Not too difficult to sand though. Whatever you want to do, you can cut it, you can sand it, you can bite it off if you want. It all works. Rocks and woks, I like that. From Monday's video, great to see the idea of batch work, seeing the process holistically. Do you ever consider adding Cabasil to these fishtails to reduce the need for damming and reglassing after the flip, or are there drawbacks to that approach? Yeah, could definitely use Cabasil for it. In that particular case with the fish, I never planned on painting it, so in the video we've just done, you see that I've painted it, and initially it was kind of agreed with the customer it would just be a clear repair, not a bright white repair on a orange surfboard. But after I had prepped it, sanded it, filled it, it turned out bigger than I thought, and I just couldn't not paint it, which happens to me quite often. So I wouldn't have used Cabasil in this job regardless, but you certainly could. And yeah, I would probably still dam, because I never really mix anything that thick, if I'm honest. Even something like Cabasil. I actually don't even know if I still have any Cabasil. But yeah, you can do it if you want. The only thing I have against really thick mixtures is that even if they're small, is I feel like there's a risk that inside it there might be air pockets. It's probably unlikely, but it would suck to let it cure and then sand it and then you open up like an air bubble inside it. Whereas if you have sort of a runnier mix, even if it's a micro balloon Cabasil type of thing, if it's liquid, it's just going to have less chances of air bubbles within it, I think. But yeah, you could definitely use Cabasil for sure. So that was really long. How am I going to type that out shortly? Great to see the oats. A bit more realistic. You could definitely use a Cabasil. Oh, did I spell that wrong? No. Cabasil fill. In this particular case, it was meant to be a clear repair. I ended up painting it. But in other cases, I might use Cabasil or similar. I tend to use thinner mixes of resin regardless, though, to try and avoid any risk of air bubbles within the pour. Sucks to start sanding and open up an air pocket. Nothing wrong with using it in a case like this, though. There's a lot of red lines. Regardless. Yep. That one was legit. Cabasil. Nice one. Oh, it's quiet tonight. Note to self, Tuesdays are quiet. Derek says, woohoo! Viewer interaction. Creator. 1001 Bulls says, very cool format, good to dive in on how things are actually done on a daily basis. So I'm glad people are liking it. I thought it was kind of an interesting way to make a series, because I've never seen one like it. All the videos are always just you working on one board at a time, and that's what happens with this board. But yeah, it's kind of, I thought it was interesting maybe to get the full picture and an understanding of why boards are quick and why they're slow, or some are quick and some are slower, that type of thing. So yeah, I'm glad people are liking it. Interesting concept. Linking it, that's not right. Glad you're liking it. Lyndon says, congrats on the 5k, great format. I'm keen to see you fix that Hobie. It'll be something different with the chop strand. Bugger, I knew I should have filmed that. I skipped the Hobie, so if you don't remember, in the first one of the series, Monday, I showed that I was working on a Hobie catamaran, which was out the back of my workshop. It had some fractures where the rudders kind of slot in, but I didn't film the process because I kind of knew I would be making it up as I went along. And I did make it up as I went along. Haven't fixed a Hobie before, haven't fixed rudder brackets before, and it was actually quite tricky because there's all these little metal inserts that you have to glass into the hull that then the rudder actually sits on, if that makes sense, and they will have to line up perfectly because there's a metal pin that goes top to bottom and it has to pass through all those holes perfectly. So I think I rebuilt both of those hulls with the metal inserts and then went to put the pin in, and none of it lined up, so I had to rip them all out, start again. And yeah, it would have been painful to film, keep that footage and narrate and edit, and I kind of knew that from the beginning. So if I get another Hobie in, I'll do it, because now I have kind of a concept of what that job entails. But yeah, I didn't film. I maybe did a before and after photo or something, but I didn't film any of that process. That's not right. What am I doing? I knew I should have filmed that. I didn't though, unfortunately, because I knew I'd be making that repair up as I went, and I might look like an egg during the process. I do have a weird job that I went to look at today though. So a local builder who I used to do some of their jib stopping for them, or interior plastering for those who aren't from New Zealand, he rang me, and they've just built this new crazy house which we went to visit today. Enormous, this place. So I went to go visit it because they've built the house, they built a swimming pool, and they built a spa off the side of the swimming pool, which is concrete and gel coat and fiberglass over the top of the concrete. But they've made so you kind of got the backrest, yeah, and then you've got the seat in the spa. The thing's square, so there's 4 seats. But they've made the seat bit that you sit on really wide, like really wide. And because it's gel coated, it's kind of slippery. So when people are sitting in the spa, they keep having to like prop themselves up because they're sort of sliding down underwater, you know. So they need to fix this. So the builder has rung me saying basically, if we bought you some big slabs of foam, could you shape kind of a you imagine a wedge, but it would start thin at this end. The backrest is here, yeah, So your seat is here. So it would go onto the seat and it would start thin at this end and it would taper up and get bigger and kind of like roll over. So when you're sitting, your legs would go up that way, if that makes sense. That probably doesn't make sense. But basically, he wants me to shape a thing out of foam so that the people using their spa don't slip underwater and drown. And then once it's shaped, then the company that built the spa, they would gel coat it and do all that and install it. So I would just have to shape these 4 weird, like, puffs, I guess. They're almost like, isn't that what you put your feet on them when you're on a couch, but this would more tuck like under your knees, I guess. So we'll see what he comes up with and whether or not that job goes ahead, but that would be a weird one, and I might film that one just because it's really weird. So why not? Dumpy, I like that name as well. Insight. Oh, this is on the Crease Board series, part 4. Pardon me. That's where those dratted bubbles come from. Oh, so he's talking about the air bubbles that you get in the pour foam, and that is exactly where they come from. Now you know. Toby Neo, double name. You are super underrated and underappreciated. Videos are always super informative and dope. That's what I've been telling everybody. I'm glad somebody's listening to me. Thanks, Toby. I like these little AI suggested answers. Do you think they're based off of answers I've given in the past? Because they kind of sound like me. Let's give him... Thanks heaps, man. No, I'm not writing tuning in. That doesn't sound like me. Third Earth Surf. Good call. How are you, Third Earth Surf? Not here tonight, I see. It's very quiet. Yeah, maybe weekdays aren't as good as weekends, which is fair enough. Good call. I think so. Yep. That was Fixing a Crease Surfboard Part 5. What was the good call, I wonder? So now that our foam is all sanded shape, nice and flat, is there audio? We're going to be left with little air holes, and so we've got to deal with them before we can laminate. Our void is filled, but we have these little air pockets here. And if we laminate over them, each one of these is going to be an air bubble underneath our cloth. Can you guys hear that? Fill them before laminating. We have now filled the pinholes in our foam. So we've swiped those micro balloons into all of those air bubbles, but we're not going to wait for that to cure. We're now going to lay our cloth and cut it and laminate it straight away with the remainder of our resin. That's the good call, I reckon. So now that our foam is all sanded shape, nice and flat, we're going to... So that's kind of a new thing I've been doing, and I imagine that's what Third Earth is referring to, is not... So what I would usually do in a case like that is you got your foam, you've poured it, you've sanded it all to shape, you've got the air bubbles, so now you've got to screet it with your micro balloons to fill those air bubbles, and then I would let that kick and cure. So this job was epoxy, so that's going to take until tomorrow. I'll go back to it, and then I'll sand it all smooth, and then I'll laminate it. But what I've been doing recently is laminating straight over my wet filler. And even in some cases, I'm using that fairing paste, the marine epoxy 2-part paste you kind of mush together, and just laminating straight over that as well. Because in theory, you're doing an epoxy on epoxy product, they're both going to cure, So why wait for it to do it? It's not like you have to shape it, you know. You just want to fill pinholes and air holes. So that basically is saving me a day on each repair. So I'm guessing that's what he's referring to. And if he is, I agree. So I'm just going to write that and hope that I'm right. Owen, as someone who generally buys used boards, is it ever worth the repair cost to fix a crease like this? I would think once the board is that damaged, it'll never be the same strength-wise. Good question, common question. I would argue that it's stronger. My repair is certainly the strongest part of the board, and that's not me bragging about my repairs. It's just a lot of extra material on the board, and as long as the end of your repair isn't made in a way that creates like a new stress point that could fracture, then the board in theory should be stronger. And especially you think about where the crease on this board was, directly in the middle, that's where you're going to get big pressure dings from knees. Probably not on this board because it's a grommets board, but for like a fully grown adult, yeah, if it's a reasonably conditioned board, you're just going to end up with less pressure dings overall. If it's an epoxy board, odds are it's underglassed anyway. So I think it's well worth it. It would probably depend what country you're in and the price of second-hand boards. But here in New Zealand, that crease repair, I think from memory, it cost $250, let's say, about $250. And you couldn't buy a second-hand board in New Zealand for $250, or you might be able to, but you wouldn't want it. It kind of gets to the point at that price range where they should be paying you to take it away from them. So yeah, for $250, that grommet will outgrow that board before he creases it or snaps it again. That would be my prediction, and then he can pass it on to another kid, and they might damage it, but they might not too. Currently in the workshop, I have two boards, a Firewire Sciatic, is it called? A Cymatic, one of them, with the weird bat tail, and Hayden Shapes something. Interestingly, both stringerless epoxies, keep that in mind, but both of them are old crease repairs from when did I do? The Firewire was three or 4 years ago, I think, and the guy's still surfing it, and he's a good surfer, and he's a bigger guy, like not overweight, just bigger build, and he's still surfing that board. So yeah, I think it's well worth it. And from an environmental factor, given the choice of throwing that thing into landfill with all that EPS foam, all that fiberglass, or paying $250 to keep it in the water, even if it isn't the same board it once was, I think it's still worth it. You could then sell it secondhand, and the person who buys it doesn't know what it once was, so it'll work for them fine. So yeah, I think it's well worth it personally. But if you're in Hawaii and a secondhand board costs like a bowl of poke and a long black, well, maybe not then, because I'm going to charge you more than that. Probably 2 bowls of poke and 3 flat whites would be my price. So it depends where you are. Probably depends where you live and the price of second-hand boards. In this case, and in New Zealand, this board was roughly $250 New Zealand dollars to fix, and any second-hand board at that price, you wouldn't want it if you could find it. I believe this kid will outgrow this board and pass it down to someone else. No worries. Strength wise, I would argue the board is now stronger than when it was brand new. If the repair is done correctly. As a bonus, keeping all that crap out of landfill for as long as possible is a +2. So yeah, I think it's worth it. People say the same about snaps as well. I see Rory. Rory, what are you doing awake? It's 11:30, mate. Been surfing a board with the crease you fixed 2 years ago. Oh, that was the... Was that the green one? Or the pink one? Yeah, that's right. I'd forgotten about that. I'm a pretty average surfer, but I don't notice any difference. Yeah, I wouldn't expect you to, I don't think. Maybe if it was like further up by the nose or down by the tail, you might feel a slight weight thing. But yeah, I don't think most people are good enough surfers to feel that much difference, really. And even if you do, you just change the use of the board. So maybe if it was like your pink one, yeah, that's what I thought. So maybe it was your step up big wave board. Well, you get it fixed and now it's not your step up big wave board anymore. You might have to go and get a new one to go survive those waves, but that doesn't mean you can't use the board still. You just use it in different conditions. So now you've sort of expanded your quiver, or if you don't like it anymore because you can feel the difference, then you sell it to someone else and they don't know how it surfed originally, so they're just going to adjust to how it surfs now. And that's not necessarily bad, it might just be different, if you can feel that at all. But I think people definitely overthink that stuff, for sure. People also tend to think that they're much better surfers than they are, I think. Maybe myself included. Denny Eck. It sounds like a swear word. Denny Eck, mate. I just bought a board today and scraped the wax off. Tried the engine degreaser and am amazed at how easy the residue came off. Followed up with a tub of towels sheet and it's squeaky clean. Awesome tip, mate. Love your videos. Who would have thought that engine degreaser would be powerful enough to remove grease from surfboard wax? Mind-blowing. Legend, Denny. I'm glad to hear that. I hear so many people talking about de-waxing boards and putting like... Fill a stocking up with old foam dust and rub your board down with that. And there's just so many weird things people say about removing wax and the grease, in particularly from the wax. Like, moving the wax is easy, warm it up a little bit, scrape it off. But then people who want to get rid of the grease have all this weird recipes and things that you need, and it's like they make grease remover. So yeah. The stuff works. That's why they make it. Way cleaner than using foam dust. And who even has foam dust? Like, I've got a shaping bay and I'm not swimming in foam dust either. It just seems like such a weird thing. I think that's what they say to do. You fill a stocking with foam dust and then just scrub the board with the stocking full of foam dust. Bizarre. No friend of mine. Caring drug. Ketamine, I was going to say. Was that the same resin used for the repair to fill those air voids? Do you sometimes have to thicken the resin for larger repair areas? So this is the same crease surfboard. I think maybe the same clip we watched just before. Was it the same resin used to... Oh, so he's asking, am I laminating with the same resin that I used to fill the air voids? Which is a fair question. Do you sometimes have to thicken the resin for larger repair areas? So it is the same resin, but what I did is I mixed my batch of epoxy and then I decanted that into a smaller cup and added some micro balloons to that smaller cup, and then I filled all those pinholes. And then once I was done with that, then I used the rest of the batch that I didn't decant into the smaller cup to laminate with. So you wouldn't normally I'm going to say, and I could be talking out my ass here, but at least in the surfboard world, maybe in the marine world it's different, but you would never laminate with a thickened resin with something like micro balloons or a filler in it. So you'd always just use straight resin, and if anything, thinned resin. So maybe with poly you'd add some unwaxed styrene just to thin it out. Certainly when doing like fin panels and things, people do that. It just penetrates the cloth easier, saturates the cloth easier. And even for epoxy, you can buy epoxy thinners. But yeah, you're not ever going to laminate with a thickened resin. So technically he's right. It is the same resin that I used. So I mixed one large batch of epoxy, then decanted some of that into a smaller container and thickened that smaller batch with micro balloons. Once I'd filled the pinholes with my thicker resin, I laminated with the standard clear thin resin. Hope that makes sense. So I mixed one large batch of epoxy, then decanted some of that into a smaller container and thickened that smaller batch with micro balloons. Once I'd filled the pinholes with my thicker resin, I laminated this with the standard clear thin resin. Hope that makes sense. Should make sense. Jan Franta, who is now a member. First question, first comment from Jan. So yes, new fan here. What is the brown stuff, please? Black stuff, mate. So that's from the What is a Restoration video, and we were using Guide Coat to do our final sanding, and I actually made a video just for that. I have a video on that now. It's called My Subscribers Ask the Strangest Questions. Not gonna lie, tricked them into asking that one. What is that black stuff you're rubbing on the board? Short answer is that it's a powdered guide coat used to show scratches that need to be removed before moving on to the next grit. Short answer is powder guide coat. That makes sense. Third Earth Surf, I have to admit this, I love getting repairs in where I can use my 2-part pour foam. Something about how fast it kicks off and raises up is so satisfying to me. I 100% agree, and I still stand there and watch it rise. And I've been using this stuff for years, and it's like a campfire. It's so hard to look away from. The other one is fresh resin coats on like entire boards. It's really hard to walk away and stop staring at them because they're just so beautiful. Oh, I did it again. See that? But if I press 2, there we go. But now I've got a 2. 100%. Still can't look away from expanding foam after all these years. What I'd really like to do one day is like buy a serious amount of that expanding foam and fill like a swimming pool or something massive with it. I think that'd be really cool, but it would be a huge waste of foam. So I probably won't do that because I don't know how you dispose of it. It's probably not the wisest idea. Fish cakes. So some of you guys have really good YouTube names, and I wish my name was that good. Great video. Could you explain a little more about your sanding process and your sander speeds, including how, when, and what type of interface pads you use? I have the same sander, but do often get a little sand through at times. So thanks. I have a video on that. Quite an in-depth sanding video. It doesn't talk about speed, but I feel like speed's kind of personal. Yeah, I use a lower speed, definitely. But with the Mirka sander, it's paddle powered, like palm sander, so you can control that speed really easily. And it really depends if you're like, if I'm feathering away a cloth edge on an epoxy repair before a hot coat, I'm going to do it with a pretty low speed because I don't want to sand through next to the edge of my cloth. Whereas if I'm doing like a crease, say, and it's a big patch of cloth and I'm just kind of scuffing it, I'm going to go with a pretty high speed and just buzz over it. So it's kind of depends on what you're sanding, and that's the benefit of a palm sander like that, is you can so easily control the speed by just kind of pinching or releasing the sander. So it's, yeah, it kind of depends on what you're doing. I have a video specific to sanding. Check that one out. It's pretty in depth. As for speed, kind of depends on what you're sanding at the time. That's the beauty of the Mirka, is that you can control the speed easily depending on the surface you're working on. Rick Marion, how's it going, Rick? I like the new format. It's helpful to see the different boards and different repairs at the same stage in the process. It's like a batch lesson. I appreciate that you put the creativity and thought into making the channel unique. Congrats on 5K. Cheers, Rick. we'll see how well it ends. So I think I already warned in the first video, but it started to get really complicated because I was filming this series. So I was literally filming all day, like everything I did, which took up a lot of room. And the first time ever since I've had this YouTube channel, I had to like charge the phone, or the camera I use is an iPhone, so I had to charge it during the day and actually delay doing work because I was waiting for the phone to charge. So I was just sitting there twiddling my thumbs or sweeping the floor waiting for some battery. So I had that going on, and then had to store that footage and kind of like remember where I'm up to and what we're doing. And then I was doing the crease series that's currently going on my shorts, so I had all of them as well. And then I've got another one of a clubby board repair, so I did the same thing. It's kind of like a series for shorts, so filmed vertically. And then at the same time as all of that, I was doing a series for the members only videos, which was laminating a wooden board. So I had a serious amount of footage stacked up in my phone during the filming of this series, because I was filming like 4 series at the same time. And so I just started to get really confused what board was in which series. Some of the boards are in this series, but also in other ones as well. And one of them, actually, I filmed the entire repair with the idea that I forgot about that, but I've got that footage. So I'll do a video on just that repair as well, but it was also a part of this series. So I may have lost track towards the end of it, and it might be a complete flop anticlimax, this one. In which case, I'll just stop uploading them and pretend I don't remember. Why is this one half filled out? Did I not press reply? That was... If you could make a full... Oh, why is it... What's going on here? Really like it. Did I not press reply on that? Reply. Okay. That was weird. Here we go. If you could make a full video, would be great. Love watching surfboard repairs. Vids very relaxing. Well, Dutchman, my channel is full of full videos. My channel, there we go, and welcome. Good on you, friend. Thanks. Keep smiling and stay liquid. I will. Don't you worry about that. Is that I was going to ask if that's rude if I put that, but that makes it even funnier. Target for video ASMR, mate. Those ASMR folks are strange, I think. I don't quite get why you'd want to hear people... Is that ASMR? Or is that really obnoxiously loud for you guys? De-waxing surfboards is the most ASMR thing I've done. I did do a video of de-waxing a surfboard, trying to target that audience, but it's really hard to capture the sound cleanly without mechanics grinding next door or me breathing or that type of thing. I think you need a really good microphone to do ASMR videos, and I do not have one of them. James Jervis, really insightful, a lot of tips and interesting stuff, especially telling an EPS core board from a PU apart from the sticker on the tail. Showing the foam difference was obvious when you pointed it out. I also have a video on that, but I don't actually remember which video that was. But we have definitely covered that in a video. Look at all these members only videos, guys. Look, there's a whole series here of laminating this timber board. So that took quite a bit to film and edit every day, mostly every day. I did get behind a bit at the end. But yeah, there's a lot of members only videos. How to tell the difference between poly and PU. I don't remember which video we covered that in. So that's lost to the archives. It's more in depth on telling the difference between poly and EPS. I honestly can't remember which video, so you'll have to go and watch them all. Let me know when you find it. Which one it is. Maybe it was a live. No, it wasn't a live thing. Buzz Knudsen. Finnish, maybe. Those World War II filters have asbestos, and the masks also have some bad chemicals in them. That's the drilling dust. They're not safe to wear, my man. Well, we've gone over that. Appreciate that. Looked into it, and my filter doesn't have asbestos. Still not recommended. That's not right. To use it though, so it's retired for now until I can buy some modern filters for it. Taranaki Frother, and he's back. Mr. Bro, happy to get my small kind fix. He's been there since just about the beginning, I think. Dumpy again. Maybe the best name on YouTube. I like how this repair is separated into process milestones. Cheers, sir. I think so. I'm quite happy with the way this edit came out. So the idea with the shorts edits, I will turn them into a full one at the end. So I did it with that surf ski that I fixed, which I imagine is in a playlist. If you go to the playlist tab on my channel, you'll find the full thing there. And also Hollywood sound effects. So that was a full shorts series, but then at the end I just put all of those shorts into one continuous thing. And the surf ski I fixed as well, which I apparently didn't make a separate playlist for, which I should have, and I will. Man, we've done a lot of videos now. It's pretty wild. Yeah, that one there. So this one.
Here's a closer look at the damage that we're going to be
is now a
today.
full video. It's a 10-minute video, but it's made up of all these separate shorts. I think that was probably like a 12-part series as well. But we won't be watching that because it's laggy as. So yeah, that's the idea with this new series as well. It will turn into a 10-ish minute video, I imagine. Lovely fish. Mask, that's a good name as well. Why? WG1DQ, also why? How do people come up with their YouTube names? My YouTube name, not for this account, but my just normal YouTube account, is just my name. I should have been way more imaginative with that. Mask, last seen at a fetish party in Antwerp, I reckon. I like that. I can neither confirm nor deny. Rude. Lear Gaming. Dude, your videos are awesome and teaching very good, but I have one question. Can you make a video, please, that you explain all about the materials you use for the repair? I kind of have, haven't I? Like this one. Well, this one covered epoxy, clearly. But then I have one on poly repairs, and that covers poly. And then I have one on expanding foam. And I have one on sanding, although that doesn't really cover materials, but that's sandpaper. Yeah, I feel like I've kind of done that. Glad you're enjoying. I have a few videos on separate materials. So this one being epoxy. I have one on poly, another on expanding foam, etc. There's a lot on the channel, so have a sift through and enjoy. Worked out nice. That was the coconut board. First time for everything. But yeah, that one did come up alright. I half expected to start filming that process of laminating coconut into a board and then not being able to do it satisfactorily and just having to paint it or do something and canning the whole repair video, but it came out pretty good. Hot coat it in poly. So that's a subject. So this is the Crease surfboard, and this was the really insightful tips on doing epoxy hot coats. So X White here said hot coat it in poly. So I'm just going to leave laughing emojis, because that is a bad idea, you guys. Not a good idea at all. And I can possibly show you why that's a bad idea. I feel like this is not what I wanted to do. Oh geez, what is happening? It's definitely not what I wanted to do. So, oh, there we go. That's what I wanted to do. Wow. So I think OSB or OBS, the software I use to do this live stream, seriously messes with, like, it just uses so much power and, oh geez. Yeah, okay, so I probably won't be showing you the example. But basically, poly doesn't adhere to epoxy. And anybody who tells you that they know how to hot coat epoxy laminations in poly is not to be trusted, because they don't. And everybody I've ever spoken to who has done it over a period of like a decade plus, have all stopped doing it. People don't do it anymore because it's a really bad idea. It doesn't work. Poly doesn't adhere properly to epoxy, and even if you could get it to, they flex at different rates. So you're going to have the board flexing, your laminate flexing, and then the poly coat not flexing as much, and it will crack and shatter. And then once you've opened it up and done that, then it will just peel off. And yeah, I've dealt with boards on several occasions with that issue. There it is. Here we go. Are we ready? Let me get my earphones for this one, guys. This is why you don't coat epoxy with poly. Bear with the loading time. Why is there no sound?
These sort of peeling resin edges and feather them back. So the next step up. So here's how our ding looked in the beginning. So the first step, of course, is to sand it. Same as any repair, I sanded it in this area, and that was just to get rid of these sort of peeling resin edges and feather them back. So the next step after sanding is normally to blow the board off, getting ready to apply some resin, and this is exactly what happened originally. So we'll give it another sand to feather those edges back, and we'll blow it off again, getting ready for our first resin pour. Or we'll just blow more resin off the lamination. So now I know that none of this resin is adhered to the cloth of the board. So if I do my repair over the top and that original resin lifts, it's going to lift my repair right off the board. I can't guarantee this repair. This, ladies and gentlemen, is why we don't put poly resin over epoxy laminations. Don't do it. This is inevitable. I hope your shaper knows more better. So here's how our ding looks.
And that is that. So I've had several boards in that have that issue. One of them actually was a Mickey T from down in Raglan. It was quite an old board, and I suspected working on it, because it was an old board, I wasn't sure, but similar things were happening. I was blowing it with the air compressor and resin was just chipping off, but kind of not in a patch like that, but bits on the nose and bits on the tail and bits on the rail and around the fin box. And so I rang him and said, I've got this big yellow board and it's a PU blank. It's an EPS blank. And he said, is all the resin flaking off it? Is that why you're calling me? And I said, yes. And he said, this is why I don't work with epoxy anymore. And we had a long yarn about epoxy, and he doesn't use it at all anymore. He won't even repair boards in it. He doesn't laminate his boards with it. He doesn't repair boards made of it. And because it was just constant drama, basically. So he went through a phase where he was hot coating all of his epoxy boards with poly, and they all ended up coming back to him with that same problem. That one in particular was a brand new custom Hayden Shapes, made in Australia, sent to New Zealand, and this damage, I believe, was made in transport, so the board wasn't even surfed yet, and this happened. And I was honestly outraged that a company like Hayden Shapes would do this and send this rubbish to a customer, forking out huge sums of money to have a custom board made and sent to him in Australia. I was offended on his behalf. So I'm actually going to reply to this guy again with that link, and he can check that out. But yeah, like I said, anyone who claims to know how to do it, they don't. Dumpy. Is there an unfiltered version? My tip, I usually put a sign up. So this was the put a sign up saying wet paint please touch to see if like that. So this video was explaining the secrets, the top secrets, the best tips possible to perfect epoxy hot coats. We can have a look at that, I guess. We can have a look, because it's important to know these types of things. I'm not falling for that again. So we'll go there. And one of the other things mentioned in the video is if you're in a surfboard factory and you see some resin on a board, don't stick your finger in it. So that was a pretty hot tip. What number was that? Part 8. Excuse the loading time.
Hot coats are notoriously difficult, tricky, temperamental. So I'm going to give you some really important, game-changing tips while I do this, so that when it comes time for you to do it, you don't run into all kinds of troubles and difficulties that are very common when using epoxy resin. And that's basically it. And you really don't want to do that because you just ruin your epoxy coat. So keep that in mind. Welcome back.
So that was the hot tips, but unfortunately the audio didn't come out quite as good with the mask on as I thought it did. So Dumpy's asking, is there an unfiltered version? And the answer to that is no, but his tip is, I usually put a sign up saying wet paint, please touch to see if dry. I like that. I might get a sign similar for my factory. Short answer is no, sadly. Audio didn't come out quite as well as I thought. I actually thought that video was very funny. I was laughing while I was editing it. Marvin says, hey man, watch out these, oh here we go, these old Soviet GP5 gas masks. I have a couple of them and all the old filters contain high amounts of asbestos. Do not use them. Get newer replacement filters, but do not use the ones from the 80s. Best regards from Germany. So I appreciate people telling me this. So this is kind of how I found out, although I found out originally through Facebook. If you're on Facebook, there's a Facebook group called Backyard Surfboard Shapers. It is the best group on Facebook. Probably the only reason I still have Facebook, if I'm honest. So somebody on that told me that the filters contain asbestos. But I appreciate people saying this, because if I hadn't found out on Facebook, then this is how I would have found out. And had that mask contained asbestos, then I would have had to work out how to sue the shop in England that sold me the mask. Also, I might have died, but priorities. Made aware of this while filming this series. Luckily and thankfully, my model of filter doesn't contain asbestos. Rid of it and finding a modern one to use with it. Andy, no, I was waiting for the tips. This is cruelty, as simple as that. That was the the same video, and that's the response I expected from that video. Cracked me up. Everybody wants the secrets to perfect epoxy hot coats, but they'll have to wait for another day. It's almost like clickbait, but audio. Yeah, this guy, RG Railing. Sorry, Tony. Sorry. Good video. I agree 100% with your standpoint on QCell, or the use of QCell. Less is better. It is. It definitely is. I don't know when it became such a crutch for repairers. I'm sure there's like an era. It would be interesting to look into of when it was kind of being used responsibly, and then when we got addicted to micro balloons and just started filling boards with them. There must be a timeline of that. People always want to know when the leash plugs invented, and the leash, and when thrusters were a thing, and all that type of stuff, but I want to know when we became addicted to micro balloons. Third Earth Surf. It's gotten to the point. Wait, I'm pretty sure. Oh no, it's gotten to the point where I'm going to have to put a sign up. People always want to touch freshly sanded blanks, and if there is a gloss coat anywhere, these people are like moths to a flame. It's unbelievable. The funny thing is, I was at a buddy's house last month, I think, who shapes boards, and he was doing a repair of one of his own boards, and it was sitting out in the garden in front of his shed with a patch of masked off resin, and I did the exact same thing. I walked straight to that board like a moth to a flame. I saw that patch of shiny resin and I just stuck my finger right in it. So in my own defense, I do that to my own resin every day, because I'm kind of checking the state of it, you know, like, can I pull the masking tape off now? Can I move the board onto another rack to free this rack up? So there's a reason for me to stick my finger in my own resin. So I guess it was just muscle memory. I saw resin and I wanted to know if I could pull the tape off it. But my buddy was quite perturbed that I would just come to his house and stick my finger in his resin. Funny. The good thing now, though, at my work is that I have Shapers Collective at the front of it, so all of my customers now come into the showroom. They don't go into the factory, so they're nowhere near wet resin. So that's a game changer. Third Earth, if you could just build a space where customers and people can go, and then you can keep your blanks and your wet resin and stuff away from greasy fingers. Freshly sanded blanks is a brutal one. I don't like that at all. Yeah, I don't like people in my shaping bay in general, just because everything in there is so fragile. So Justin, who I share the shaping bay with, obviously, but if anyone's coming around for beers or something, I put all of those blanks like right up. Even having a customer come to like see the board you're shaping for them, like holding it and touching it makes me incredibly nervous. Actually, that same friend who I stuck my finger in his patch of resin, the first board I ever shaped, I shaped in his shaping bay, or I kind of finished it off in his shaping bay, and he dropped a saw. It was done. Like, I'd just finished screening it. It was ready to go. I was kind of standing back admiring it, and he reached for one of those Japanese pull saws off his wall, and somehow, I don't know what happened, but he dropped it, and the end of it went straight into my blank and made a big hole in the foam. So I feel like I kind of owed him a poke to his resin. But yeah, I don't like people around my blanks. And Third Earth, again, I can agree to an extent, but that's the same video where I was mumbling in my mask. Critical advice right there. Well, now everybody joins the bloody live stream. Where have you all been? We're out of comments. That's the end, you guys. Unless there's some new ones. Let's see if anything else has popped up while we've been ranting, yarning, as it were. Nah, that's it. So we've done this whole live stream with about, on average, 3 people, and now we're out of comments and there's 10 people, or around 10 people. Seems to be coming in and out. Interesting. So yeah, that is basically that, you guys. So I think this series here, the creased one, the shorts one, what are we up to on that? Part 10. So there's 2 more parts to that, I believe. So I'll put one up tomorrow, I'll put one up the next day, and that will be done. And then the video series, the one I've just uploaded today, I don't know how many of them are left. We'll see how the editing process goes. I mean, obviously we're going back to Monday, so there's 7 of them, but I ended up filming beyond the Monday just to finish off the boards we started in the series. So there might be 2 or 3 more videos after this week is done. So there's going to be a video every week for this month, which will be a first for me. Dan G, great videos, interested to see the new format of multiple boards at once. Cheers, Dan. I'm glad. I thought it was a good idea. I'm glad people are enjoying it. I did say earlier, we'll see how it ends, because I was just so inundated with footage while I was filming this series, the one you're talking about. I was also filming this series, which was a members only series on laminating this wooden board that came in for a customer, which I will make public at some stage. So for the non-members, you guys will get to see that, because I think it was a interesting little series, and I'd kind of like the customer to see it too, and he's not a member. So yeah, I'll make that public. So I was doing this series, and then I was doing this crease series as well, and then I filmed another series on my phone for shorts like this, which was a clubby board. And so I was just so inundated with boards and footage, I lost track. And so I have a suspicion that this series here might be a bit of a flop towards the end, but we'll see. By flop, I mean maybe just really short videos because I didn't film enough, or there might be some weird editing because I've like mixed boards up from series to series, something like that. But we'll see. We'll see. I don't honestly remember how it ended, so it'll be a surprise for me while editing as well. But yeah, that's basically it, you guys. So thanks to those who joined, and we'll see you in a week for Wednesday, part 3 of this series, and then we'll do this again and answer the week's worth of comments. Yeah, that's it. Hope you're well, guys. Have a good night. I'm going to bed because it is midnight. But like every week, I have to work out how to stop doing this thing. There it is. Stop streaming.